Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. We have a very special podcast for you today, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But before we do, we are just going to welcome our recorded audience, and then we'll join and gather everybody all at once so we're all on the same page. So hang on for us for 1 second. While we're doing this, why don't you take a second and share the feed on your page so that we can have a group of people that are growing together this morning. So let's do it.
Can I say this too? Today,
Sure.
Please share it. This is important.
Yeah,
this is an important conversation today.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this week on the Discipleship Track podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Rob, joined as always by the awesome Patsy Proddy. Patsy, say what's up.
You know, it's morning, so I'm saying good morning.
Time out. Didn't work.
Sorry, Facebook.
There we go. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this week on the podcast. My name is Rob. I'm your host, joined as always by the awesome Patsy Proddy. Patsy, say what's up.
Hey, you guys.
And we are here because we believe that God has called us to live a life that is fully devoted to Him. But in order to do that, we've got to put in a little bit of work. It's not going to happen on its own. So we create these podcasts each and every week-ish so that we can grow together. So we hope you take us with you wherever you are, whether you're cooking in the kitchen, walking the dog, picking up the kids from school, in your office, sitting at your desk, driving in your car. We want to be there with you so that we can grow together. We have a really special episode today of the Discipleship Track podcast. I'm going to just jump right in on it. At the time that we are recording this, it is September 11th today.
Yes, it is.
And so Patsy and I were talking a little bit in our pre-show meeting that how could we not take some time to just talk through this day. We had a different topic planned, and we both felt like, we need to stop and we need to talk about this because this is probably what I would say, at least in my generation and below's lifetime, like one of the most significant days of our lives, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't need to give it much of an introduction because I think everybody knows what happened on September 11th. But today, I think, is a day that is kind of, I put in the description of the show, a day heard round the world, right?
Yes,
it's a day where it doesn't matter where you were or what country you were even in this day. You heard about what was happening on September 11th. And for us here, where we're recording this episode, New York City is only about 20 minutes from here.
Yep.
And I can remember when it took place, when the attacks took place at the World Trade Center, that I can remember being in school, and my school was kind of on the hill, and you could overlook the city. And I remember when it happened, they stopped everything, like classes and everything stopped, and we found a TV if we could find it. Some of us ran outside and up on the top of the hill, and you could see the smoke and everything that was going on in real time. It wasn't even like you needed the TV.
Yeah.
And I remember just standing there, and
you almost can't believe
nobody
you couldn't
knew.
Believe it.
No one knew what to say.
Right.
Like it was like, this is not a movie. This is not like something that somebody like put together or staged. Like this is real life that's happening right now. And it's something that it's a season that I put in the description again, like at that moment in that day, 18 years ago today, America began a season of grieving.
Oh.
Right. And the season is still happening to this very day. I can remember, again, because we're so close to the city and we have so many commuter parking lots, that I can remember for weeks after September 11th, driving past the parking lots and seeing cars still parked there from the whole time and knowing no one's going to come and pick that car up.
Yeah.
And it was the most awful feeling and the most real and raw thing. And I think it was such a real picture of grief for me that I think for all of us, it would do a disservice to the day and to what took place that if we didn't take some time this morning and just talk through what it looks like to grieve. Because I think, especially in the area where we're recording this here in North Jersey, it feels like somebody knew somebody that was affected by
everybody's
it.
Connected.
And so I think we want to take some time and just talk about it because, especially on an anniversary, I guarantee you there's thoughts and emotions and things that are just popping into our heads, and we've got to do something with them, right? They're not going to just go away on their own.
I think they become even more real where we live, as Rob said, we could see it with our eyes. You could go outside to the highway or to, wherever you were, and, you could position yourself where you were literally watching it happen with your eyes and everything. And it was, as most people often recall, one of the prettiest fall days. It was a beautiful day. And the irony of that, of going, everyone who woke up early in the morning going, oh, what a gorgeous day. And then to have the most unspeakable evil happen to us, this assault on our nation, on our families, on our children, on everyone. There's just so much pain that goes along with that. So we do have to talk about grieving. But today, while we're recording today, it's a similar kind of day.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful blue sky. It's a fall day. And I think that makes it even more real, even though it's 18 years. So I was a young mom when this happened. And I still had, I had, my one daughter was either 4th or 5th grade. I can't remember right now. And just the panic over my husband first calling me and saying, Pat's, a plane hit the World Trade Center. And, the initial response before we knew anything was, oh my gosh, did the pilot have a heart attack? What happened?
Yeah.
What happened? You think right away and feel. And then as the morning, as we know, as the hour progressed and hearing everything, and then the second plane, which I saw happen, and the Pentagon and Pennsylvania and all of that. And then my husband calling me back saying, so here you are, a young mom. And my husband calls me, he goes, we're at war, go get the kids. And I was like, what do you even do with that? How do you even, I couldn't even process what was happening. And there's the grief and all of that, the grief of losing our safety and our security and all the things that we felt, it's like, losing your innocence, it was all just shattered in that moment. And, I just want to say before we even get into like talking about grieving, to my friends, to my neighbors, to the people around the world who lost someone today, to the children who never got to meet their parents. We are praying for you. We love you. Our hearts break for you. And we will never forget. We will never, ever, ever forget. And today is for you. Today is to somehow walk through what is unspeakable and to put words to it so that we can help people take that next step forward. Because for some people, even though this is year 18, they're still doing it one step at a time. And they're still living moment to moment. And we are right here with you in this moment. So I guess if we're going to talk about grieving, just to, because I'll just cry through this whole thing because it's still just too raw and real. But if we're going to talk about grieving, the first thing that I want to say from me is I don't think that there are any rules about grieving. I also, often tell you guys that I work in a doctor's office too. So we deal with the loss of life quite often, which is tragic. It's always tragic. It's always hard. It's always difficult. And grieving comes in all shapes and sizes. And there's lots of people out there that will tell you that there are steps and everything. And I'm no disrespect to the people who have the patterns and they want to help people navigate that. And I love you for trying to help people navigate grief. But in my experience, I think that there really are no rules because for everybody, it hits them differently, right?
Yes, absolutely. I could not agree with you more. And you kind of stole the one thing that I had that I felt like I could share today. And you know what? Like, I joke about it, but it's true. And we're talking today about how to grieve well. And you know what? It's kind of catch-22 because it's like, if you figured out how to do that, can you let us know? Because grief is so messy. Just kind of where we're at. The reason that we actually wanted to talk about this topic for a few weeks now about grieving.
And we didn't know when would be the appropriate time.
And we didn't know when would be the right time. But the reason that we wanted to talk about it is because I feel like we've been sharing how we're all kind of in seasons of grief in one way, shape, or form in our lives. And I think one of the dangers of not grieving well is not recognizing that you're in a season of grief. Right? I think many of us are grieving something, and grief doesn't just happen at a death. Right. I think for some of us, we think, oh, well, no one close to me died, so I'm not really in a season of grief.
Like, I don't know what that's like.
But we're grieving almost every single day. You could be grieving a season of life that's over. Like for many people right now, September, I've talked with so many young moms and dads whose kids just went to kindergarten for the first time. Believe it or not, as exciting and celebratory as that is, you're now grieving because that season of having your kids at home with you 24/7 is now over. And now you're in this new season of life. And recognize that if maybe you're feeling a little something and you're just like, I feel a little down, I'm sad, I'm angry, things are just really upsetting me, whatever it may be, it's probably because you're in that season of
Right.
grief. Don't downplay the season to think, oh, well, how much could it really affect you? A lot. Grief is so intense, no matter what level or what stage you are in, you know? So grieving a season of life, grieving a change of career,
Yep.
grieving a change of house or moving or
Sure.
or whatever it may be. Maybe you had a relationship that's not there anymore. Maybe you just broke up or you separated or what. Those are all seasons of grief.
Yep.
So grief is so much broader than just someone close to you passing away.
Right.
There's so much more to it than that. And I think for a lot of us, we miss that. I think that's one of my biggest takeaways from this last season of life that I've been in. Is just that. Like there was a time not that long ago where I was just sitting down and I was like, okay, God, why do I feel so angry all the time? And it feels like the littlest thing will set me off and I have a disproportionate reaction
Right.
to what was
Short
done
fuse,
towards
yeah.
me. And as clear as day, he just put it on my heart. He said, Rob, don't forget you're grieving right now.
Wow.
And I was like, well, what am I grieving?
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah,
know
like,
I
what's going
went
on?
through a lot of grief in my life, but what am I grieving right now? And, you know, we're kind of at a place in our lives right now where we've had a lot of relationships that are not as connected to us as they used to be for a variety of different reasons. And I never realized how much that affected me to not have those people in my life that I could just pick up and text or call or
Sure.
just do life with. I never realized how much that was affecting me right now because I didn't consider that a piece of grief.
Right. But it goes back to the original reason that we were, one of the things that we were made for is we're made for relationship and connection, and you want to connect with other people. So anything that severs that connection, immediately the next response of the soul is grief. And I think that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about. You covered so many topics about grief, and they all are different forms of grieving. But grief at its very core is like an assault on your soul. And
Yes.
everything inside of you, from the depths of you, when we think about what today is, and today is 9/11, and that was one of the, like we said, it's just this unspeakable moment, but the loss of life, the loss of relationship, whatever it is, it's that assault on your soul. And the thing inside of you that says, the spirit of you inside of you, it says, can't be what was intended when I was made. It's
Yes.
not supposed to be this way. So I think it's first and foremost understanding that grief is something that should, I've often said this, unspeakable grief can often bring the greatest clarity. It can open a door to saying, it's not supposed to be like this. This can't be what God intended. And how do I navigate what's coming next? Because this wasn't supposed to happen. Today, what we're remembering, this Memorial Day, was not supposed to happen. The loss of a marriage, the loss of a child, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a friendship, the loss of a season of life. All of those things weren't supposed to happen. We weren't created for loss.
Yeah.
We were created for life. And that's why, when things are going well, when you're celebrating, when you're on vacation and it's great and the weather is nice, you're feeling so good because you're thinking, this feels right. Everything in my soul is lining up right now saying, this is what it's supposed to be like. And grief is that assault on the soul. So, what do you do? What is step one when grief hits? I think step one for most people is, like you just are indicating to us, accept the fact that we all grieve.
Yeah.
And you can't stuff it down. You do that quote of that person, like
Yeah.
if you bury it, it
That's
will
right.
grow.
Whatever you
And
bury,
forgive
you
me, I
plant.
can't remember who it was that you
Whatever
were quoting.
you bury, you plant, and whatever you plant grows.
Right. It's going to grow. So if you bury your grief, you're burying pain. You're burying angst. You're burying like that thing that is just that hurt. And it's going to grow, and it's going to manifest itself, like you said, whether you're going to have a short fuse, or you're not going to be able to relate to others, or you're suddenly going to be disconnected at your job or whatever. So I think don't bury it. Don't bury it.
Absolutely.
However you need to address it. And if that just means finding the friend, and I've said this to friends before, like if you just need to call up and scream into the phone, I'm there for you. So maybe if you're not grieving right this moment, be that for somebody else today. That's a step that you can take in helping someone in grief. Just be the person that says, I'll just sit with you and be quiet while you cry. And some people are going to need to cry a little longer than others.
Yeah,
and that's okay too. There are no rules about this, about what you're going through yourself, and how you process it yourself.
And I think another thing that's important for us to remember with that is that grief, it doesn't end.
No.
Right. I saw a great quote, and I can't quote it today because I'm all over the place. But it just said that grief never ends. It only changes shapes. And I think that's really important because I think sometimes two things. One, to somebody that is grieving, we think, I can't wait for this grief to be over. And we feel like we're broken because it doesn't feel like it's ever over.
Right.
And we feel like I must have done something wrong if I can't get past this. And the flip side is, I also think for people that are walking with people who are grieving, like maybe you're not directly affected by the grief, but this person that you care about is walking through a season of grief, it's super crucial for us to recognize that grief doesn't end. It only changes shapes, because one of the greatest failures I ever did with my wife when she was going through some of her most unbelievable grief is expect her to finish.
Yeah.
And I got bitter and I got angry and I was like, can we just be done with this already? Right? And I can remember one day like sitting there after like I just blew it for the umpteenth time with her. And I'm like, man, can't she be done with this? And in my heart, I was like, no. Did you just lose your mom and your sister? Like, really?
Yeah.
You want to just push that over?
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't end. It just changes shapes.
Right. And you know what? Because people often say this, right? If there's grief or something going on, and I have probably been guilty of this, and I apologize to anyone that I've said this to, but when they're going through a season of grief and you say something like, well, don't worry, soon it'll get back to normal. Exactly. There is no back to normal. There's no such thing as back to normal. No. First and foremost, you cannot go back.
Exactly.
You can't go back. And telling anybody it'll go back to normal is I think just so hard for them, because how do you go back? You can't go back. You can only go forward into what's next.
Yep.
So I think like for me, what I want to be for anyone who's grieving, anyone who's listening today, is to say, you can't go back to normal, but you can go forward and I'll walk with you.
Absolutely.
And like that's a pledge and a promise we make here on doing this. The reason that we're here is because we want to help people know that God loves you, that he made you, that he's with you every step of the way, that there's never a second that he takes his eye off of you.
Right.
So I'm not going to tell you you're going to go back to normal. I'm going to tell you, let's go forward together and grow closer to the only one who can make things right,
yes.
To God. And I think another thing with grieving too is, oftentimes we question and we'll ask like, why did God allow this? Why is this happening? Whatever. And I'm in a place right now where I'm learning more and more as I'm growing in my faith, is that the things that are bad in life, the things that are evil in life, the things that hurt in life, all of that stuff that we just don't want to deal with, that makes us feel like I am today, like I'm on the verge of tears all day, that does not bear the fingerprints of God. God made everything good. When evil crept into this place and got its tentacles everywhere, all of that is not from him. So when we're grieving, rather than shaking our fist in God's face, which I know seems like, because we know that he can fix it. So we want to do that. We want to say, but why? Why won't you just fix it? So I want to encourage you today, rather than shaking your fist in his face, and I understand that, instead take his hand. Take his hand, because his hand is right there. He is a breath away saying, I love you. I'm in this with you. The Bible says, Jesus says he was a man who was acquainted with sorrow. He understood about grief, and that's a process of getting to know him, growing closer to the Lord so that he can walk you through your season of grief and what it will look like as you continue through your life. Because all those scars, you take them with you. They don't go away.
That's right.
They turn from a wound to a scar, but they stay there and they're a memory. And every once in a while it hurts again because the anniversary comes around or something reminds you, or maybe you walk into a restaurant and you smell something and you're like, oh, that was the last meal that we had together, whatever it is. And it's still there, but we want to give you tools to be able to try to, to walk through that. So I think first is please take God's hand.
Yeah.
You know, just take it. Whatever that looks like for you, whether it's just praying, whether it's just that, you know, saying out loud, I know you're here. You know, they're telling me that you're here, so please show up. And trust me, God knows how to show up in a way that that you'll know that that's him.
Exactly. He's an incredibly personal God.
Right.
And he knows how to show up in a way that is going to be exactly what you need.
Someone recently, we were talking about grieving, and that person took a picture and sent it to me. Actually, I don't even know if we were talking about grieving, but we were talking about something about faith. And that person took a picture and they were like, look at this picture. Doesn't that cloud look like a heart? I feel like that was so from God.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, you know what? Only God could do that.
That's right.
So that is how he speaks. So don't negate those things that you see in nature. If for you, in your moment of grief, you see something that gives you just that little glimmer of hope, that is that gift from God where he's saying, yeah, I hear you. I'm here. I am here with you in this time and in this season. Yeah. So, you know, that's like one big thing is that I would say, you know, do that. One of the other things that is an awesome thing that we have today is we do have the internet and we do have social media, and you can get on there and you can just Google inspiration and look for things that are going to feed your soul something healthy. You know, again, not trying to stuff what's bad in you, but when you're hurting, you know, just like if you cut your hand, you would immediately go for water and medicine and bandages and things to make that pain, you know, to make it better. So look for the things today or whenever you're grieving, if you're going to tuck this away for another day, look for the things that are out there in the world where people are trying to spread love and joy and inspiration and connection on that level, connection. Because when you connect with others, that's where I think that, you know, where help can come, where healing can start.
Absolutely. And I think in the healing process, I think it's so important for us to understand, and I'm guilty of this, but it's something that I've changed. It's a way of thinking that I've changed recently as I've been really trying to understand grief a little bit more. And, you know, I think for a lot of people, we've heard the phrase, oh, well, we need to walk through the stages of grief.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to say before. Like people say that.
And I think one thing we need to understand in order to grieve, well, another thing we need to understand in order to grieve really well is that there are no stages.
No.
Because
it hits
anybody
everybody
that's
different.
ever grieved, you are not this. Grief is not this nice, neat step by step of, okay, I'm in the denial stage. Okay, now I'm in the anger stage. Okay,
Right.
now I'm in the pain stage. Now I'm in the processing stage. Right. Now I'm in the acceptance stage. Anybody that's ever grieved knows that's a load of garbage.
Right.
Because you're in every stage all the time.
Right, yes. Sometimes you're in all of them, sometimes you're in one of them.
One stage, like I joke about this, but I'm an Italian at heart, right? And I like to think of it like a big plate of spaghetti, right? Because
which we love.
You exactly. I love my carbs. But you know, if you look at a plate of spaghetti, you pull a noodle. You try to pull one noodle, you're not going to be able to do it. 5,000 different noodles are going to come on your fork, right? Grief's the same way. You may try to work through the anger stage of grief, and when you're pulling on that anger stage, you are pulling on anxiety, on fear, on worry, on denial, on you name it. And it's just going to happen. That's just the way it is. So don't think like, okay, I was supposed to have been past that piece of grieving now I'm in this stage. No, you're in grief. Grief is messy. Grief is ugly, and it's a process, but it's a process that has so many different parts and pieces that's not going to look pretty the whole time.
And don't add more to what you're going through by saying like, oh, I was supposed to go through this process. I have a friend who lost her husband a few years ago, and she's like, I really didn't cry a lot, but I'm not. And she was almost like apologizing for it. Like she felt guilty, you know, because I'm supposed to go through like the grieving stage where it shows up in tears and everything. And I remember saying to her in that moment, I was like, you know what? There are no rules. Yeah. And if I've learned anything by being in the doctor's office, that's what I've learned is, and as I was saying to you earlier, that for some people, the grief comes out in like so many different ways that would horrify you, you know, if you heard, and ways that break your heart. But that's what it is. It's just messy for everybody, and it's different for everyone, but it's okay. Yeah. It is okay. The way that you're grieving is okay. You know, you of course don't want to put yourself in a place where you're hurting someone else. Mm-hmm. You know, you want to turn to somebody for help, but what you're going through, you've got to let yourself go through that process. Yes. Whatever it looks like for you. And it, like you said, Rob, it happens sometimes all at once. Exactly. And do you know that sometimes when I go to a memory, all of that grief, it comes back like almost like it's happening right in that
Absolutely.
moment again.
Yeah.
So you relive it, but I will say this, that as the years go by, so it distances you by years from whatever that trauma was in your life, whatever it looked like that caused that, you learn different things later on. So maybe that's like a process of grief. I don't really know, but I know now when I remember the things that bring me the greatest sorrow, the griefs in my life, I not that I look at it differently, but maybe I see something I didn't see before because it was just too intense at that moment.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't want to, give a false thing like say, oh, and I'm thankful for that. But I do know that I'm at a stage where I want to go forward. And I know maybe some of you are watching and listening today and you're saying, I do want to go forward. So don't feel guilty about allowing yourself to say, okay, that gave me a little clarity. I learned something through this.
Yep.
I think that's okay too, to say that even through grief, you can learn and you can grow and you can change. And I don't think that's something that should make anyone feel guilty.
No,
if you grow through it.
Not. Absolutely not. And speaking of guilty, can we just shift gears for a minute?
Always.
Only because we have a couple minutes left, and I just wanted to take some time because I think this was so important to focus on people that are grieving, right? And what it looks like to walk through those pieces of grief. But I think it would be really beneficial too, because I think especially today with it being 9/11, and like I said before, we all know someone who is grieving, right? And I think it's really important for us to take some time to just look at how can we as friends, as neighbors, as spouses, as coworkers, whatever it may be, walk with someone who's grieving in a healthy way. You know what I mean?
So like practical steps to
yeah,
walk
like what do
with
we
them.
do? Like I'll start, right?
Go,
and it was great
I know
because I was thinking about this, and then somebody actually put it in the comments of the Facebook live, which is great. But they said, don't ever say to someone, "I know exactly how you feel."
Oh,
that's grieving.
Don't do that.
I'll never forget. I heard this great story of a man who lost his wife, and this is a true story, and I know the person very well. And he was at the funeral, right? And he was in the receiving line for the viewing, and a man came up to him with all the best intentions, who had also lost his wife years before. And the man said to the man who was at the funeral, "I know exactly how you feel." And the other man looked at him and he said, "I appreciate that so much, but I just have to say you don't, because you didn't lose my wife."
Oh, wow.
And
so true.
And I think there is so much power and truth
Wow.
in that statement, because we may have walked through similar seasons, but no two people grieve the same.
That's right.
And no two people experience the same kind of loss.
Yeah.
So we can maybe empathize to an extent, but we can't completely understand because we're not grieving like they are.
I think sometimes one of the worst things that we can do, like you said, with the best intentions, is when someone's grieving, come armed with your speech that you're going to give them, because you're going to jump right into the middle of their grief and you almost hijack it and make it about yourself. And again, people have good intentions and you can make that mistake. I think, you have to read the person that's grieving and know what they're looking for, but you have to be super sensitive to give yourself the pep talk before you walk with someone through grief and say, "Please, God, help me not to make this about me."
Yes.
And just to listen, because someone may need you just to sit with them and let them cry ugly and let them scream and yell and let them do whatever they need to do, and for you to just sit there and say, "And you know what? After all that, I still love you.
Yeah.
I still love you, and I'm here, and I'll be back tomorrow, and I'll be back the next day, and whatever it is that you need,
Yes.
I will be there for you." So for today, who's grieving today? If you know someone who lost someone, maybe it's just, sending them a message or calling them and just saying, "I just need you to know today how much I love you." Because maybe that person just feels like they lost so much, that they don't feel like there's any love left. And if you give them that love, like give it, what you have, give.
Yes.
But please don't lecture. I've had that with, in the time of grief, quick story, years ago, my daughter had a terrible accident. And when we were at the hospital, one of the nurses, who I'm sure meant well, did not let me call my mother or anyone because she was like, you have no news to tell anybody, so you don't do anything. And she let me go through that horror alone. And I'm sure she meant well. I'm sure she thought like, you're going to end up hurting your mom or whoever, all these other people, because you don't have any news to give them. But I needed someone with me. So I think one of the things about when you're with someone and trying to help them walk through it is this is the time that you need to listen and ask God for wisdom so you know what that person needs. Because in that moment, I did not need to be alone.
Yes.
I needed the people who loved me, but I listened to what that person said because I thought they must be smarter than me because they are in medicine and they do this for a living. And it was such a mistake for me.
Yes.
So I think listen.
Yes.
It's okay to be quiet with someone.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to what they need and don't be afraid to ask them,
Yeah. I got to jump on that because I can't agree with you anymore that in grieving and when you're engaging with someone who's grieving, there's nothing you're going to say that's going to fix it and make it better. So stop trying.
Yep.
Like that's the best advice I could give to anybody. If you're like, well, my spouse is going through loss or my friend or whatever, don't try to fix it. Like you're just not going to have the magic quote, the magic phrase, the magic word.
It doesn't exist.
That's going to take away all of the pain and make everything better. The best thing you can do is what Patsy just said is just listen and be present. Right. And I think I'm going to share one more and then you can share one more if you want.
Sure.
And then we're going to wrap it up. But my last one would be this. It's a 2-part one. The first part is don't take it personal. And the second part is don't make it about you.
Yeah, don't.
I
Please
think
don't.
a lot of times we come into those times where we're trying to love the person that's grieving, and they'll say something that bothers us, and we'll take it so personal, and we'll get angry at that person of how dare they say that? What's wrong with them? They should have known better. Yeah, they probably would have if they weren't in the worst pain they've ever had of their lives. So recognize that and don't take it personal. And then unfortunately, I've seen it happen time and time again, is what happens after that is when you take it too personal, you make it about you. Yeah. And then you'll say to that person, do you know how much you just hurt me with that? Do you know how bad that stung? How could you make that comment to me? Yeah. You should have known better. And I would encourage you with all that I have, don't take it personal and don't make it about you. It's not about you. Right. It's not about me in that moment. It is about them and what they're going through and how we can be there for them.
And if you're stepping into someone's grief, you better be ready because grief, like you said before, it is ugly and messy. So if you're stepping in and your intention is, or my intention is, I want to help this person in their grief, I got to go into that ring ready because some of that is going to splatter on me. Yes. And I have to be willing to look at my friend or my loved one or whoever it is. And when it splatters all over me, I have to just be able to wipe it away and say, and that is okay. Yeah. And I'm still here and I'm not going anywhere because that's what it means to help somebody, is to be with them no matter what. When they break the rules, when they say what they shouldn't have said, when they show you the ugly side of grief, you have to love them enough to say, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm here. Right. Or you know what? Then don't go. You be the person who just sends the card. If you can't handle that, that's okay too. But then don't show up. Because when someone is in the throes of that devastation, they don't need somebody, like you said, with all the right catchphrases or with that, I'll help you to a point. Yeah. But as soon as it splatters on me, I'm coming after you. Totally. Then please just don't go. Know your own limitations. Yeah. Know your own limitations and do what you can do. But if you want to really love somebody, get in the mud with them. Yeah. Get in the mess with them and sit there with them. And I'll tell you what, nothing will grow a relationship closer than walking with someone through their darkest moments. Yes. And if you walk with them well, you are going to make a friendship that will last forever. And that, my friends, is truly what God does. Yeah. Because God is there in the ugly, in the messy, in the heartbreak, in what seems impossible. You have a God who loves you so much. And he said, if you take my hand, I will not pull my hand away. I will be with you. And the promise is, I will stay with you forever. And no one will be able to take you out of my hand. Yeah. What a beautiful promise, that we have. So, and that's how we get to reflect God for our friends, to just say, there's no rules. That's right. Whatever you need to say, I'm here. I'm not leaving.
Yep, exactly. Well, hey, I think that's a perfect place for us to wrap it up today. And so as we close, again...
Can I, before we close, I
Absolutely.
do want to say one other thing.
For sure.
Because I think that this is hugely important, and for me, it's very, very personal. This is a day of remembrance of grief and sorrow and pain. But life is more than grief and sorrow. It's more in the sense of there's additional things to that. And we remember and we respect. But for today, for some people, for my sister Mary, today is her birthday. And it's okay to still say to someone, I am so glad you were born. And we celebrate life today too, because today babies will be born. And I don't want moms and dads to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe my kid was born on 9/11. Yeah. The people that we lost, that we love, one of the greatest ways that we can honor them is to grieve for them, but to also celebrate life, the life that they lived, by saying, you know, God gave us this person. On the day that we lost you, God gave us someone else, and we're going to teach them about you and help them to know who you were and to remember you and to celebrate life, because I believe our loved ones would want that. Yeah. They would want us to live again and to remember the good and the joy. So for the people who have something special that today is, if it's your birthday, we love you, and we are so glad that you're here, and we still do celebrate the life that you give to this earth on a day when we all are grieving. It's all that circle, right? Yes. It's that circle that sometimes just doesn't make sense, but I just wanted to say that.
Yeah,
I just wanted
good.
to say happy birthday to my sister too.
So important. And for everybody, we hope that this was something that gave you some practical things to wrap your mind around, whether you are in the midst of grief right now or you're walking with someone who is grieving. We hope that this is something that can help you do that just maybe a little bit better today. And again, for all of you, as we are recording this, which it is on September 11th, for all of you who are grieving today and remembering what took place on this day 18 years ago, please know that we are praying for you. Yes. And we are grieving with you, and we love you, and we are here for you in any way that you would allow us to be. Yep. So maybe, you're listening to this and you have a prayer request. Maybe you have a question, a comment, even something you'd like us to talk about a little bit more on a future episode. We would absolutely love it if we could hear from you. So you can respond and get in touch with us in a couple different ways. You can leave a comment below. You can comment on the Facebook broadcast. You can respond on YouTube. You can email us at discipleshiptrack@powerhousecc.org. We get every message and we respond to them. So we would love to hear from you in any way. And if there's anything that we can do for you, we would be honored to walk with you through whatever it is that you're experiencing right now. So with that, I think we're going to close it here, and we will say goodbye. And we will catch you next week on the next episode of the Discipleship Track podcast.
We're praying for you guys. We love you guys.
Thanks, everybody.